seems to be no love lost between Lithuania and Russia. The former Soviet state was the first of the Baltic countries to claim independence from the Soviet Union. Since Russia's military intervention in Ukraine, Lithuania has declared its energy independence from Moscow and continues to bolster its defense with help from NATO. We're joined by Alvydas Medalinskas, a political scientist and former Lithuanian Member of Parliament. Welcome to Viewpoint.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the power struggle between Russia and Lithuania in a way. Lithuania has been trying to get its independence. So what exactly is going on now?
Well, Lithuania got independence in 1990. It was really not just like beginning of independence, it was a restoration of independence, because Lithuania, as other two Baltic countries, were independent countries between 1918 to 1940. And in 1940, Lithuania was occupied by the Soviet Union, by the way, twice, 1940 and after 1944. And in between was a German Nazi occupation. So, I mean, 50 years of occupation, of course, was very heavy, with the heavy consequences for the Lithuania. For the Lithuanian people, many of them were deported to Siberia, or died, killed in the forests because we fight it against occupation. And all this memory is still alive. But I mean, it was a very good period of relationship between Lithuania and Russia. When the President Yeltsin was in
the
president.
Kind of power independence that Lithuania has had, that Russia has kind of had control in Lithuania's power. Is Russia completely losing its grip on that power in the region?
Well, I think that Russia has less and less grip if you're talking about energy independence.
Yes.
Because really, it was really declared like all three Baltic states are some kind of islands inside EU who have still this quite a heavy energy dependence from Russia. But this problem is really comes now for the solution with the LNG terminal, which is very important for Lithuania. Also with the cable links, energy links coming from Sweden and Poland. Estonia gets also from Finland. So wherefore this dependence is diminishing very strongly. But of course, Baltic states, because we've been occupied by the Soviet Union, we've been incorporated to this energy system of the Soviet Union. And for example, if we're talking about pipelines or gas lines or whatever, we really this infrastructure which was built in the Soviet Union. And the main idea of this infrastructure was dependency on Moscow, dependency of the center. So wherefore, yes, it took, from 1990, it took 25 years to loosen this grip.
But let's just talk about then, like you say that it's taken a while for Lithuania to finally gain its energy independence. But in 2009, the main Lithuanian nuclear power plant, the Ignalia, was closed down. Didn't this make Lithuania more dependent on Russian gas or Russian energy?
Yes, it did. But of course, this nuclear power plant had a Chernobyl-style reactor. And of course, European countries were very much afraid of this kind of nuclear power plant, this kind of reactors. And wherefore, together with the European Union, it was a common decision of Lithuania and European Union to close down this nuclear plant. But I think what was important is that EU understood this problem. And EU said, okay, we will help you to close down this nuclear power plant, but we also to help you to solve various problems with losing this
EU
grip
helped
from the
close
Russian.
down the power plant, but
yes.
did it help kind of keep Lithuania connected to the rest of the EU in terms of energy?
Because of such financial help, which Lithuania was getting after this nuclear power plant was closed, we have to keep in mind that, for example, with the help of the EU, Lithuania and other Baltic states, building some infrastructure, very important, roads infrastructure, because we've been dependent not only on the gas lines or pipeline, but also in the road system or railway system. Again, was different in the Soviet Union or even Tsaristic Russia, and different in the Western countries. So we use helping to build this infrastructure. We use helping to build also some infrastructure in the energy sector and so on. But of course, you're right. The main question is, was it right or not to close down nuclear plant? It's really to believe that this nuclear plant was safe or it was not safe. Our European partners were thinking that it's not safe, therefore it have to be closed down. Some people, even Lithuania, were thinking that maybe it was safe enough because some additional arrangements were taken for the safety of this nuclear plant, that maybe it could operate, and of course, closing down this nuclear plant, of course, especially for the beginning, it really increased dependence of Russia and energy dependence.
So maybe the EU didn't see it through, didn't kind of see what kind of consequences this would have.
Well, yes, we were talking with our European partners about this, that our dependency might increase after closing down this nuclear plant. But again, the safety standards were one of the main arguments with our partners. And again, we quite understand it. So therefore, what I'm saying, we negotiated various deals about this, how Lithuania could build a new energy infrastructure. For example,
now it seems that there's some work in that. Let's move on. Let's talk about Russia's exclave of Kaliningrad. Now, what kind of implications will this have there?
Well, this exclave has a border with two countries which are members of the EU and NATO, Lithuania and Poland. Of course, we are not very happy to have such kind of exclave on our borders. I mean, it's very good. We had very good contacts, and we still have a good contact with the people living in Kaliningrad Oblast. But the problem is that because of the aggressive Russian policy, which would like to have Kaliningrad district not such as a peaceful area, but it's a military district, very heavy militarized district. Even the people living in Kaliningrad have a problem with that. But of course, countries like Lithuania and Poland also we do have. Lithuania, by the way, when Lithuania became member of the EU and NATO, we solved the question with the transit. Of course, civic transit and even military transit going to our territory, and that was done with the help of the Western powers. But now probably the biggest problem, it's not this transit issues, because it was solved, both the people movement was solved as a problem, but it's not really only the power. The problem is Russian military hardware, Russian rockets, like Iskander and others, who really creates now problems not just for the Lithuania and Poland, it creates for the Baltic Sea. Because so those rockets might reach, you know, even shores, Sweden, Denmark, and so on.
Just to interrupt you there. So how does Russia get its military hardware into Kaliningrad? Well, or does it not?
Well, it could be two ways. One of them it's via land, but to my understanding, those rockets were not brought via land, so there is another way via sea, and it's quite possible for them to bring it via sea.
Do you think it's more expensive, though?
Well, I mean, you know, Russia sometimes does not pay attention to the fact that some things, consequences of a policy might be more expensive to this country. For example, if Russia would calculate and if Kremlin leaders would understood that annexation of Crimea would bring so sanctions from the Western countries and so on, and if would some kind of deal with this, some kind of nationalistic fever, which they themselves really raised up so high now in Russia. So then, of course, maybe, who knows, other countries probably would not do such kind of things, would not do such kind of steps,
because
like Russia did in Crimea.
What actually happened to
Russia?
Russia.
Because we understand that now it's the 21st century. And you cannot go with the rules of international relations coming from 19th century, when annexation of another territory was a quite, well, I wouldn't say normal, but at least such things happen quite a lot. annexation of another territory after the Second World War were China with Tibet, Turkey with North Cyprus, and Russia with Crimea. And by the way, Russia have to understand, no annexation of other territory after the Second World War was accepted by the Western community. So the same happened with the Russian annexation of Crimea.
Well, talking about acceptance of annexed state or annexed parts of state, the latest Pew Research survey has shown that not a lot of people from NATO member states support the Article 5 obligation of NATO, which is to protect fellow NATO members. How does that make ordinary Lithuanians feel who genuinely feel a threat from Russia?
Well, not very good, of course. I acknowledge that. But of course, we understand that the governments of the same Western countries are still supportive of Article 5, because we understand something what probably don't understand ordinary people on the street of Berlin or Paris, for example. We understand very clearly that the whole architecture of the security and stability in Europe after the Second World War were built up all around two main institutions, EU and NATO. EU gives soft security guarantees, NATO gives hard security guarantees. Of course, there is a OSCE, but that's another matter. So therefore, if NATO country, whatever NATO country, some people talk about Baltic states, and now after the events with the Russian planes, which Turkey shot down, some people are talking that now Turkey may be under threat of some Russian military actions on whatever response. So if any NATO country would be attacked, or if any provocation would be done against NATO country, then what about Article 5? If NATO does not defend, and of course we understand that also Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, our countries also have to put efforts for our security, for our country's security. But if NATO would not react, then what does it mean? That would mean a big threat for the whole NATO, for the whole European security architecture.
Okay, well, I'm afraid we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
This has been Alvydas Medalinskas, a political scientist and former Lithuanian Member of Parliament. You've been watching Viewpoint on Ukraine Today.